Well, hello everybody and welcome to the Galloway Forest and the end of a 2-week trip for me where I've been travelling around parts of southwest Scotland looking for new locations to photograph. Generally speaking, when I come to Scotland, I either head to the northwest, the far north, or the central belt around Aviemore. But this trip has been specifically focused on looking at new areas for potential photography, and part of that included the Isle of Bute this time, not Arran, I have to say. I'm saving that for another visit. So because this is the end of the trip, it's a bit of an odd one, this one, in that I'm going to cast you back now to the beginning of the trip where I visited a couple of locations. The first location was one where I photographed, I won't say a rare plant, but a plant that I've never seen before but known about for the best part of 35 years, which is quite bizarre really. I never go chasing around looking for specific things. If I encounter them, I encounter them. If I don't, I don't. And that's certainly what happened on this occasion. Now that was not far from a place called Tarbert, and I'll put a map on just so you know roughly where in Scotland that is. Now the second location wasn't far from Dunoon, and it was right at the side of a ferry terminal. Now we got there just to have a look around, but the beach at this ferry terminal was absolutely fascinating. The rocks on the beach were just something else. I've never seen a beach with so much detail and interest ever. So that was the focus of the second part of this film. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cast you back to the start of the trip where you can see those images being taken, and I'll meet you back here in about 10 or 15 minutes, by which time hopefully I'll have found something else to photograph. So I'll see you shortly. So you join me en route to find a little plant that I've known about for the best part of 35, maybe 40 years, and up until now I've never seen it. And I'm not the sort of person that goes hunting for specific plants. I'm not like the equivalent of a bird watcher called a twitcher. I just happily go about my business and photograph things as and when I find them in the places that they grow. But we were just out for a walk with the dog, and spotted this little plant by the side of the footpath, and it was one of those almost surreal moments where you know it, but you almost can't believe that you've seen it. So this is a plant called Piri Piri Burr, and I believe it's a bit of a nuisance in some places, and probably most places, and I can probably tell you why that is. We realised just how annoying it is for dogs when we looked at our willow. Her paws were full of the stuff and we had to stop and pick it all out. But at the top of this path is where I found it, and I'm heading there now, and hopefully I can find a nice cluster just how I want it, in the shade. I don't want it in sunshine, as you can see what it is now, which is why I'm heading to where the trees are. This particular plant does like the more sunnier aspects, but obviously as the sun moves round it gets in shade at some point during the day. Anyway, I will shut up waffling on, get this hill out of the way, and catch up with you when I find the right plant. So I've got to the area where I first started to notice them, and interestingly it's just about where the pine woodland starts. So they clearly like the more acidic soil conditions. But as I say, I've been in these sort of places many times over the years, but never seen these. So whether they're just specific to this area, who knows? But I'll show you the plant now, then you know what I'm talking about. So this is the Piri Piri Burr, and you get various sort of points at which it's flowering and setting seed, but I quite like it when it looks like this one here, because you get these lovely red edges to them. And what my thought is, if I can get a group that are all in one focal plane and set them against a dark background perhaps to really pick them out. If you watched a recent film, I photographed some spore capsules, and I'm thinking something along those lines where you get right in amongst them and you photograph to a lovely clean uncluttered background. So I'm going to spend a bit of time just rooting around here, just looking for the right group. It's well worth investing that time and not just jumping straight in and just photographing anything. It's got to look aesthetically as nice as it possibly can do. So I will catch you in just a minute. Right, after much ferreting around, and I mean a lot of ferreting around, I've finally found more or less what I've been looking for. The problem I've had is that most of it grows along the forestry tracks, and it clearly likes the warmth that it probably gets along there. But from my point of view, there was far too much wind. The wind is just howling up. I say howling, it's really blowing up the tracks and causing me no end of problems trying to get them still. So I've dropped down into this. The track is just literally just here. Dropped down into a much calmer area, and the plants are much more sparse down here, but they do occur. Let me just spin that round. So you see, just down here, it's all growing. At the back there as well, just over there, lots of it around here. And I've found a nice group. You see my camera is on this area here, and it's just on this bit of a raised area. And I have manufactured, hand on heart, a little bit, these three here, beautifully growing, but they weren't on the same focal plane, so I've just persuaded them to move just by sort of manufacturing the moss that they're growing in amongst, by just putting a bit of pressure on just to get them in the same focal plane. And you can see the sun's coming out now and they're backlighting beautifully when you get down low, but I haven't got the dark background that I really wanted. But you know, you get what you get, and I'm happy with what I found. That group of three is a really nice group. I just hope there's not too much height problems. I'm wondering whether the first one, which is quite high, let me just show you again. So the one on the left is really quite high compared to the one on the right, and I'm just wondering whether it will probably work best as a vertical shot rather than a landscape shot, which is what I was really looking for. But like I say, you know, you can't be too choosy about these things. You've just got to take what you can. I'm just pleased that I found three that I could sort of get in that nice focal plane. So I'm going to line the shot up now and see how it looks. Right, just really quickly, there they are. They look absolutely beautiful. There's just one problem, and that is the background vegetation is too distracting. I can't seem to get this done without the sun coming up, but the background vegetation, let me just darken that down, is just a real problem, and I'm going to weight it down just so it gives these stems a little bit more room to breathe. Otherwise it just looks too cluttered behind them, and they really need to be elevated against a darker background, and I really don't like the way they're set against that leafy vegetation as it stands. So I'll do that now before I take the shot. So I'm opting for hand holding. I just can't get low down enough for the shot that I want. The tripod, as you can see, it goes pretty flat, but it's not flat enough, and I'm just finding that on this occasion it's working better if I actually look through the lens and get down in amongst it. And that looks absolutely beautiful, stunning in fact. Really happy with that. I just need to open the exposure up ever so slightly. 400th of a second, f6.7. I'll take a vertical as well. It's really nice as a vertical. Let's have a look at that. So I'll quickly show you the images on the back of the camera now, and before I put them on screen. So there we have the horizontal shot that I took, and I'm having a bit of a conundrum as to whether I like
the landscape version, there's a couple there, or the portrait version. The portrait version is quite nice, but there's not really a lot of room for the plants to breathe on the edges, and it becomes more of a plant study than something a little bit pictorial. Plus, for me to use this, I would have to take some off that bottom as well. I'm not keen on that heavy portion down there, but certainly the ones that I've got where they've got a bit more space to the left and right is what I prefer. I might even have it in the sequence, but I prefer this taller one here to be just a little bit more to the left, just to give it a bit more of a compositional element. I feel that it's just a tad, the whole group is just a tad too central where it is there. In fact, that one is, yeah, that one's just a little bit further to the left. I probably prefer that. So I've got a few to go at. They all appear to be nice and sharp. If I just go, oh, that one isn't, hang on. Let me just move to the next one. Yeah, so you see that one there. These little tips, these flowering tips are nice and sharp on that one. So I've got what I'm looking for. Yeah, that one's nice and sharp as well. So I'll just zoom out. I've definitely got what I wanted, and it's just a case now of picking my favourite. Certainly the ones in the softer light is nicer. Just check that I've got sharpness in that. Yeah, that one there is absolutely beautifully sharp. So I've got a sharp one in the softer light as well. So happy with that. So after much faffing about, I've got what I wanted. So I'll put probably the landscape version on now. What a fantastic little patch of beach this is. And just because you're right next to a ferry terminal doesn't mean to say that there aren't great photo opportunities to be had. So Ruth, me and the dog came down here about an hour ago, and we've spent much of that time just sort of combing this little area of beach, looking for interesting objects, pebbles, rocks, seaweed, sticks, all sorts of things. And there's some great compositions to be had. So I've been back, obviously I've got my camera, and I've found 5 that I shot with my camera. And of those 5, there are 3 that I really like, and I'm going to photograph those now. Now, annoyingly, one particular shot of the 3 that I really like I can't find at this moment in time, but hopefully by the end of the session I will have found it. It's either on this patch where I'm stood, or it's on amongst those rocks just over there to the right hand side. And I say that because they've got like a pinky coloration running through them, and the shot has definitely got those markings. There's another rock there that's quite similar, but I really want to get those 3 because I think they'll make for a nice little triptych. And I know this film is going to be from 3 separate locations, but this particular sequence, because there's so many opportunities here, it would seem a shame not to do this segment as a triptych in its own right. So get the camera out, and the first 2 images are just behind the camera over there. Like I said, the 3rd one is around here somewhere, and hopefully I can find that. If not, I'm in no doubt that I can't find something else. So you'll just have to forgive the noise of the ferry in the background, but the 2 images that I've got, one of them is just down here, and the second one, which we'll go on to in just a minute, is just here. You do get this when you've got rough
water, which we've had in the last couple of weeks here, you get stones that get washed up and just lie randomly on the tops of rocks. Examples of that are, you just see they just all the shale just ends up getting positioned in these random places. You see that one there. I suppose what I'm trying to do here is just prove that I have not placed these rocks in these positions. So the first shot just down here, and what I liked about this were these lovely red lines running through the composition, and of course you've got these pebbles that have spilled onto the gap and filled this bit of a hollow here. Now what I've done is that my composition basically incorporates just this lower half section of these lines on this part of the main rock here, and then a bigger section of that part of the rock here. So we've got essentially a third of the composition down at this bottom end and 2/3 up at the top, with this just intersecting that middle section. So I'll show you on the back of the camera now. I'm not sure how possible that's going to be. In fact, I'll show you with a little video camera, because I don't think I'll be able to show you on the back of the camera. It's so bright today that you're almost certainly not going to see that. So what I'll do is I'll use my little video camera and I'll broadly set up the composition, and I'll talk you through with that instead. So hopefully you can hear me all right. So bearing in mind that the aspect ratio on this little video camera is slightly different to my main camera, but what I've gone for is something that looks not a million miles away from that. I've not got this bottom stone in just here. This is definitely out of the shot. It's something along the lines of that is what I've gone for. Now I have done a focus stack, reason being is that this section of rock up here is so much higher than the pebbles down at the bottom, and certainly these right down at the bottom here. So I've done a focus stack of 5 images. So there we have it. So just so you know, in terms of settings, I'm currently on f19 and we're getting a 60th of the second at 100 ISO. On this occasion I'm using a 28 to 85mm lens. I'm not using a macro lens, absolutely doesn't need it for this. In fact, the macro lens was far too close, so for those of you that haven't got dedicated macro lenses, this is the sort of thing that you can certainly manage to photograph yourself. So I'll put that first shot on now. Right, so my next shot, I'll just spin the camera around, then you can see it. Literally 4 feet away from my first shot, and it's this beautiful little stone here that's set on this much bigger rock embedded into the beach. And you can see the lines on the edge really echo the lines on the rest of the rock itself. Now what I'm going to be careful to do here is when I do the composition is I'm going to make sure that the lines run diagonally through the frame as opposed to running straight as they are there, which isn't as appealing to my eye anyway as they are when they're on that strong diagonal. Now of course this camera is working on a 16:9, my camera's on a much squarer composition, or I should say crop, than this. What I'm going to be careful to exclude, I don't want to include these lines here, and similarly I don't want to include this line down here. I want it to be all about just those main features and how they interplay with this little rock that's on the top. So I'll get the camera on that now and grab that as well. So I think I'm about there. This really hasn't been easy at all trying to align this. As you can see, I've got the tripod on top of the rock itself, and just moving the tripod into position has proved really quite difficult, because no matter where you move the tripod as you rotate it round, each one of the three legs is on a different height. So it's not like when you're on the flat ground and you can just turn it round and move it into different positions. It's really quite a complicated procedure to get it into the right place. And I've persisted with it because I desperately want to get the composition exactly where it needs to be. The other thing I've had to deal with, as you can see now, is the sun's coming out, and that's a real problem. Whilst there seems to be more cloud than blue sky around today, I seem to be getting a lot of the sunshine whilst I'm waiting to take the picture. So I have grabbed the shot whilst I had a moment of consistent light, and once you get all that together it's actually quite easy. But because it is so bright generally, I'm not using live view. This is one of the occasions where I'm actually looking through the camera itself using the mirror. And all I'm doing is I'm still using the 2-second timer, but I can see quite clearly. I don't need to zoom into 100% for this sort of thing. I can see where it's nice and sharp, and it's just a case of the light's quite flat now, so I'll just do it again just to show you. So I go to the bottom left hand corner of the frame, I take one 2-second timer, and as soon as that's gone I just refocus on a different part of the stone, which in this case is the edge, the rim of the stone itself. I take another one on the top of the stone, so I've now got the bottom part of the frame. I've got the stone ridge, the bottom where it meets the rock, I've got the top of the rock, and then the next one, the top right of the frame, is where those lines are at the highest point. And I'll stack all those together in Photoshop. So I'm really happy with that. I've got the nice diagonal that I wanted. Some lovely light on the rock at the moment, lovely, consistent, bright, overcast light. That's of course when the sun's not out, but it's really lovely. And those lovely brown lines running through with those little flecks of yellow really work well. So I'll put that on now. So I've officially given up. I've spent half an hour looking for this shot and I cannot find it now. Fortunately, I've got it on my phone, and the quality of the phone is decent enough to put it on for you now and make up that nice triptych that I wanted. But just look at these rocks, just 1 second. Now these lovely, beautiful lines, all these salmon colours running through the rocks, and then you've got the pebbles in amongst them. And the pebbles themselves are interesting. You're going close to the pebbles, and there's compositions to be had literally everywhere you look. And you can incorporate some of the other natural materials like the seaweed. There's just so many possibilities. But just down here, this is where I thought my composition was, but sadly it isn't. But look at the lines here, they just look like wood grain. Absolutely beautiful. I could spend easily a week on here and never get bored. I mean, really beautiful. Look at the line down here where you get the pebbles intersecting with the smoothness of the rock face. That in itself is a nice composition. Lovely S shape there running through the rocks. This really is an Aladdin's cave, but sadly I need to get going. Our campsite, we're due at a campsite this afternoon, so we've got to get moving. But what a wonderful beach, and certainly if I'm ever in this area again I'll be sure to revisit. So I'm going to put the triptych on now, and I will see you at the next location. Just off to my right, now that the ravens have departed, you can just hear a repetitive, very, very quiet background call. Can you hear that? That's the sound, the call, should I say, of a young woodpecker. Just over to my right there's some old rotting trees, and within them almost certainly will be a cavity with that young woodpecker in it, and its repetitive call is what it does when it's basically waiting for the parent bird to come back and feed it, and that call will get quicker and louder as the parent comes in. And when it does, you'd hear the parent call, which is more of a single, much louder individual call. It's interesting because woodpeckers, when the young are fed, it's a digested soup, almost something that's regurgitated. So the parent will go away, collect the grubs, insects, swallow them, digest them partially, and then regurgitate them back, like I say, as this soup that the young feed upon. And that happens around about every 25-30 minutes. So I don't know how long it's been since the last feed, but we're probably not going to get to hear the peak activity. I've not really got time to stand here and just wait, listening, but it's gone much quieter now. Hope you can hear it. Always lovely to hear. So I haven't found my shot yet. I don't know exactly what I'm going to shoot, but I had started to look down at the ground, which is something I have to remind myself not to keep doing all the time, and to look up as often as I look down. Part of me wanted to photograph a bit of a landscape to finish off the film today, but as you can see, the light is quite flat and overcast and not really conducive to that type of photography. I've certainly not got any atmosphere. And just as I was coming through here, staring at the floor, I couldn't help but notice the ferns in the background, all backlit by the light coming in from above. Now, I haven't worked anything out at all. I may be barking completely up the wrong tree here, but I'm not thinking a close-up particularly, but more of an all-encompassing scene. I say all-encompassing, a small section of the backlit ferns. See if I can find a composition somewhere in amongst this area in the immediate foreground that I can shoot up towards and try and piece a composition together. As I stand here looking around, I can't see anything obvious as a main feature, and that's what it's really going to take. There's no point in just photographing a load of backlit ferns. You do need some order to be provided among all that chaos, and that's what I'm not seeing at this moment in time. But the best way to find out is to get your camera out and start scanning around, looking through the back of the LCD or through the viewfinder is what I'm going to do with my mirrored camera. Hopefully I can find something. So the shot that I had in mind of the backlit ferns, which are just literally off to my right hand side there, didn't work out, so I carried on along my journey. I've come down this little footpath here, and as it happens, I'm now above the ferns looking back, and I've come across this particular cluster here. They call these shuttlecock ferns for obvious reasons. They look like big shuttlecocks, but there's different types. This one is actually called a scaly male fern, and I'll just show you a close-up of the reason why that is now. But what's drawn me to this is that we're at this time of year when the ferns are at their best, and this one is looking absolutely pristine. And as I've walked along and looked into the top of it, they've got this beautiful fan of leaves, or fronds, or which they're actually properly called. And what I've done is I've tried to create a bit of an abstract scene. Now, I'm not 100% sure whether this will work or not. My plan is to shoot it as a focus stack at f/16 and get the whole thing sharp. But when I look on the back of the camera, as I'm seeing it now, which is the lens at its widest aperture, which is f4.5, it looks quite interesting in that a great proportion of the scene is out of focus. You know, what can happen, you can get back on the computer and look at it and think, actually, no, that's not worked. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take both versions, one where I've got the whole thing sharp and it's an enormous focus stack, because the beginning of the edge of the scene starts here, and then you've got right into the depths of the fronds where the final part of the image ends. I'll show you on the back of the camera now so you can see the arrangement of the composition. So there's the composition. I think it's showing quite nicely on the video camera. Just hope the sun stays in whilst I talk you through this. Now, I've used the rules of thirds to align this composition. As you can see, I've got the bottom part of the fern off to the bottom right hand corner of the frame. Then all these fronds are fanning out from it, creating a lovely lead in to the centre. Sorry, not the centre, but the centre part of the fern down at the bottom there, which just takes you in. As you can see at this moment in time, you're looking at the lens at its widest aperture, and it's nice and sharp here, but it's soft at the back. I don't think it's sufficiently soft enough to really work as a single image shot wide open, like I say, f4.5. I think it will be better stop down, and that's why I've taken both versions with the second lot of sequences at f/16. I'll just quickly show you on the back of the camera the shots that I've taken. So you can see here it's nice and sharp here at f/16 and relatively sharp at the back too. That's where I start the stack, and then I work through, and you can see the back becoming progressively sharper to the end point there. So it is a stack of 1, 2, 3, 4 images in total. In terms of settings, at f/16, the shutter speed is a 40th of a second, and you can just see there I'm at ISO 400 because there is a little bit of breeze. You can actually see, if I brighten that up, you can see that all these are blowing around, and no amount of waiting will stop that at this time of day. So overall, I think I'm really quite happy with that, and I'll put that on now. Well, that's it from me for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have, give it a lovely big thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe so you see more content from me. And if you want to support me that little bit further, you can join YouTube as a member and also Patreon. You can join either of those from as little as 99 pence per month. I'll put the images on now so you can see them all in sequence, and I will say thank you all so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.